Welcome back to another episode of Catholics Living Discipleship. I'm your host, Darren Nelson. In today's episode, I speak with Father Sean Prince, who's pastor at St. Pius X Catholic Church in Norfolk, Virginia. We have a conversation about the importance of engaging parishioners and others through the use of videos and how it has really helped him as a pastor to evangelize hearts. He shares with you how he got started, what inspired him, and also the impact that it has had with parishioners and others who have started to watch his videos. He'll also encourage you to get started as a pastor or ministry leader and talk about some of the ways that he got started in the very beginning. If you'd like to view some of his videos, you can check out the description below, and there's a link there to his videos called Take One. So let's get into the conversation with Father Sean. Welcome to Catholics Living Discipleship, Father Sean. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast talking about what you and I both have mentioned or talked about being a very important topic for pastors to consider, or really anyone who's looking to evangelize people at their parish can do this. Ministry leaders can do this, but really to talk at your level, at the pastor level, about shooting videos, YouTube videos. So welcome to Catholics Living Discipleship. Excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and really thrilled to talk about our video series that we started at the parish a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So remind me, it's called Take 1 Minute, right? A video series that you started at your parish. Walk us through, like, what inspired you to do that, to start sending these little videos out? What inspired you?
Okay. Well, I think to answer that question, I should offer just a little bit of background to help me build into what I witnessed and saw to help shape my reasoning for exploring this and reaching out to others to assist me with it. I entered formation in 2006, and during my formation, we, during our summertime, spend a summer in different parishes. And so you get to see, the life of a parish and how different parishes operate and their different ministries. And then about halfway through your time in our diocese, you do a year-long internship. You're pulled out of the seminary right before your third theology, right before your year of diaconate, and you spend a year in a parish. So you get to see a full life cycle year. And that's really the kind of discernment never ends, but for the priesthood, we kind of say that that's the ending moment, or the really sort of pinnacle moment for our formation, because we really get to see the full life cycle of a parish. And so I did that experience, and I got ordained in 2012, and I was a vicar for 1 year and then became a pastor, and was a pastor 5 years, bishop secretary for 3 years, director of worship for 6 years in the mix of all those. And now I'm a pastor again, where I've been since 2021. And what I found was, throughout my time since 2006, that in Advent and Lent, the church talks about how these are seasons to prepare, and Advent to prepare us for Christmas, and Lent to prepare us for Easter, and those great celebrations and those great seasons. And it's also a time that we're supposed to slow down and we're supposed to catch our breath. But in my experience, in Advent and Lent, parishes like go into warp speed for some reason. And we try to offer as many different, speaker series, or individuals to come in and lead retreats, or different prayer avenues, or there just seem to be so many things going on, and none of them are bad, but they create so much work, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I started to find, are we really allowing people to slow down, or are we actually encouraging them to speed up in seasons when the church says, take a breath, just sort of step back, especially Advent, with the world around us and the rush of Christmas shopping and all those things. These are really beautiful seasons in the liturgical life of the church that really force us, or can force us, to step back and take a breath. And so as I was coming back into parish life after working with the bishop for 3 years, there were 2 individuals that I had worked with in the past. Cass Hooker, who's been doing work in the parishes in the area of formation since the 90s, and V. Bartow, who had been my assistant since 2015 when I took over as director of worship, and she worked in my old parish as well. So we had worked together quite a bit. And then a third individual, Steve Delaney, who is a theology teacher. And then in between taking some time off from that, I hired him to be the youth minister at my old parish. The four of us worked quite well together with the other staff at my old parish. And so when I got to my new parish, the four of us usually would get together from time to time. And we did once. And I said, I really want to think about something that we can do during Advent and Lent that is going to be prayerful, is going to lead people into the season, is going to encourage them to, take a breath, take a moment, step back, but is also going to be formative. So how can we bundle all that into sort of one opportunity and moment? And we were coming out of the COVID era. We were coming out of the time when everything seemed to be done video-wise, and videos and different mediums were being was being utilized to pass on the faith, to evangelize, to encourage others. And so we started to kick around this idea, and I said, well, what if I really want to do a video series. And I said, but I don't want it to be super long, because a lot of videos that we sometimes view, which, if you're sitting down and doing a video once, okay, you might sit for several minutes. But I said, if we're going to do something daily, I want it to be a minute to 2 minutes max, something that someone could put on in their car, something they could put on, on their phone as they're getting ready in the morning, sitting, having a cup of coffee, whenever it is, but that it's some moment that is brief, in a sense, of a minute to two, that gives them a little piece of catechesis, a little understanding of what's going on in that season, and then even a reflective question or something to ponder for that day. And I said, I think that would go, a long way with parishioners at St. Pius to see, doing something different, in the season, because we had done, parishes had done speakers, those types of things, and they all are great. So we got together, and Steve and Cass really have, still to this day, they do the bulk of the writing of the scripts for the videos. They send them to me. I edit them, polish them up, rewrite some, write some of my own here or there. It just depends, but really a team effort on those. And then V, who has a great sense of media and just a marketing eye, she really goes out with me and does the filming of the video. So she's on the other side of the camera, and then we, do the filming, and then she does all the back end work, the editing of it. So when we first started this, we thought pretty small. We stayed local. We stayed around Norfolk in Virginia, where the parish is located. We did a number of videos at different sites on property. We have a school with us, so we had other buildings that we could utilize and other areas to utilize for these videos. And so the messages were not so much location-based as they were a catechesis and understanding for the seasons. And then we did take one or two videos, maybe more than that, in the first seasons, and we would go off to other sites in the Norfolk area or Virginia Beach area that people might recognize. And we did sort of tie in some subject matter from that location, some element from that location, in order to talk a little bit more about the season of Advent, or a scripture reading, or a piece of art, or whatever it might have been. So we did some off-location video recording. So we put together the first year of Advent. I think it was Advent of 2021, so right after I'd gotten to the parish. And, I announced it to the parish. I said, we're going to try something different. It's called Take One Moment, and Take One Moment for Prayer is really what the idea was. So a play on words there, but the three of them chose Take One and said, you need to call it Take One, because I'd done some videos in the past, and they said, you always do it in one take. So we need to call it Take One for that. So anyway, so it was kind of a little comedy internally with us on that too. But it did have that meaning of, we really want you to just take one moment each day for prayer, reflection, etc. So I announced it to the parish, they're going to drop every morning at 6 a.m. and we do them Monday through Saturday. And that's their message for the day. We do not do a video on Sunday, because the message, we say, is the homily for the weekend. And so every morning at 6 a.m., they're programmed to drop. And so we did the first season, and it was quite eye-opening, the response that we received. There were just numerous people that stopped me that first week after Mass and talked about how meaningful they were, how much they enjoyed them, the message in them. There were parents that said, I put it on in the car when I'm driving the kids to school in the morning. Some of our school teachers play it first thing in the morning as their sort of start to the day in their classes. It really grew legs and really grew beyond what we had imagined. And then when we got around to Advent, we repeated what we had done the recent, when we got to Lent, we had repeated the process I just described that we had undertaken in Advent. But it's a lot more videos, obviously, because Lent is a lot longer. We had a Lenten mission.
Let me, Father Sean, let me ask you this. I mean, that's wow, like that's a great context, right? Of all that. And I'm wondering, because I'm thinking about this right now, if someone who's listening to this, because what's great is that the way that the parishioners responded right away. I think you connect, you accomplish what you were hoping to do, connect with your parishioners, right? What I was wondering as I was listening is, how did you choose? Because I think this is what goes through some of people's minds. Like, you know what? Maybe even a pastor. I do want to shoot a video. What do I say? And now you had Advent as that moment, right? You had that you could have said a lot of things, but you're only within a minute. Like, how did you really start to, when you said I wanted to do videos, how did you start to think about, here's what I want to say in that 1 minute for someone, with those pieces that you said you want to be catechetical, and reflective. And there was one third piece. I forget what that third piece was, but, how did you first come to understand, here's what I do want to say? What's the message? Yeah.
Well, we looked at Advent and we looked at many of the themes that run through Advent. And then we would pick up on one of the themes. And for instance, Elizabeth and Mary, we would do one of the videos on them. And it was almost as if we drew simply one line from the scripture passage. And we took that one line and then we built around that. And so one of the gifts that Steve has, for instance, is he's very good, far better than me, at looking at art and other elements of life, so to speak, poetry, for instance. And he was able to sort of take that one line and pull in a piece of art. And so I would start talking, and we would then, V would have the piece of art go up on the screen for the people to see as I spoke about that piece of art very briefly. And then there was the mention of the scripture passage, and then a little bit of a reflective, message, but then even a question for you to reflect on that particular day. And so that's kind of how we originally started with it. As we progressed in the series, I want to say it got easier. And the reason that it got easier was because for the first couple of years, like I meant, the first couple of years, we stayed local, and we did stay around the Norfolk area, Virginia Beach area, the parish. But then it was about 2 years ago, I was taking a fairly lengthy vacation, and it was going to be through parts of Europe. And we got the idea, well, why don't we get you some equipment to take with you and give us the plan of where you're going to be, and let's craft the series around, wherever you might be journeying during, your vacation. And so we have now started to approach it from that point of view, is that annually another priest friend and I lead a pilgrimage somewhere around the world. And so when I'm on that pilgrimage, one of the series gets filmed while I'm there. And then any other personal vacation times that I might take to different places, we try to integrate that in to build out whatever might be our series. So it was 2 summers ago, I had a number of different trips over the course of several months. And we had some videos with me when I was with some clergy friends in Canada. And then we had some videos when myself, Cass, and V were on a road trip through New England visiting some different liturgical shops. We made some stops in different places, New York City, etc. And we sort of bridged all those together. And so locations became the starting point for the conversation of where we
Oh,
were.
that's cool.
So recently I was just in France, and so the series that's coming out this Advent has videos from Lourdes in it when we were there for several days, and different sites in Paris when we were there for several days, and then I went to London for a few days thereafter, and there's a few videos from London.
Yeah.
So I kind of do on location shooting, which has we have challenges and we overcome them, but then we create more challenges. And so that's where we kind of are right now, is that location and film quality, or film quality and stability, and that those types of things were wonderful when V was with me the whole time. But now the challenge is I'm filming them and I'm doing them, but we've got locations. And so that's helped to overcome the
Yeah.
challenge of what are we going to write each season?
Yeah.
Because one thing that we were finding is doing a series is, and I think many of us clergy realize it, that oftentimes Advent, there's only so many themes, some may say. And so when do we start just repeating ourselves? Which there's nothing wrong with that, because we need to be reminded again. But the challenge in writing scripts again for Advent for us, we found after 2 or 3 years, we were starting to kind of repeat ourselves a little bit. And so adding the location element and looking at it through that lens has really opened a whole nother realm of possibilities for us, to be able to keep the series going.
Yeah.
You'd asked the question about videos and how do you kind of get them started and everything. What prompted this too was we shot a video for the All Souls Mass at the beginning of November in 2021. I went to a cemetery. It was a little bit of a catechesis about All Souls, but then it was also some practicalities about how we were going to celebrate it, practices we were going to start to incorporate in that celebration in the month of November. And that was really our sort of test run. And it was pretty straightforward because we picked All Souls, we picked a celebration, and that became the backdrop that we could then fill in with our catechesis and other elements. So I would recommend to all that are considering getting started with this that it can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be. If you want to drop one once a month or once every quarter, pick a major feast day or pick a major celebration maybe in the life of the parish community, and use that as your backdrop, and then build from there, and look at it, from there. So that's what I oftentimes would advise people on, with regard to the video series, because you can go into this, and many others have, and it's great that they have, of we're going to do something on baptism, and there it is. Now, where do I go from there with it? So maybe trying to narrow down a little bit more, about that, in a sense.
And the other thing I'm thinking about when you're talking as from a pastor's perspective is you're not looking to be to go, maybe you are, but I think in the beginning you're not looking to go so broad that you're reaching people across the United States. You're looking for engagement at the parish level.
Right.
And so what was your experience with that? Hey, I sent some videos out. Here's what I'm starting to experience now in terms of engagement with my parishioners. You had mentioned some people would come up and say, hey, I loved this reflection. But in what way do you see doing videos like this helpful for you as a pastor to increase engagement at the parish level?
I think they're helpful because with the life of a pastor and the work of a pastor and the demands on pastors these days, all those different elements, that this is one of those things where you have a little more control over it, and you can sort of set the timeline. And you can set the parameters even around it. And what I mean by that is if you're doing a Lenten mission, you're picking specific dates on the calendar, and you've got to get a speaker or however many speakers you get. You've got to organize X, Y, and Z. You've got to do this, that, there, and the other. And you have a pretty set definitive deadline, timeline that you have to meet. With these videos, if you're planning to, like we do now with Advent and Lent, for instance, we are able to plan those out much further in advance. And so we can record them earlier. We can then edit them earlier. We are then able to really get the seasons together. And then when Advent and Lent happen, we're able, as pastors and even the staff supporting me, to actually watch them and reflect on them ourselves rather than run around to prepare them so that our parishioners and people have that opportunity. So that's what I have found very beneficial about it is we can set the timeline ourselves, and the four of us have got a pretty good mapping of what that timeline looks like. That's really been helpful. We have found to be helpful. And you're right. We started out with we had we had no objection, or we had no objective, excuse me, that this would blossom into what it's blossomed today. And it's not Word on Fire, Robert Barron, and reaching hundreds of thousands of people. But after the first series, and even after the first year, when Lent came around after the first Advent, people started asking or saying, I'm forwarding these to my friends, I'm forwarding these to others. And so we started picking up people that were registering for the videos every morning from across the country. And then looking at the analytics, we started to see that it was happening across the world, that there were different places in the world where people were signing in. Now, we're a very military heavy parish, so I'm sure that many of those are friends of military that are here, sending them to their friends that might be deployed elsewhere. But we started to see that this wasn't something that was just remaining in our parish. And so for us, we've expanded it. And now when we talk about Take One, we don't do the introduction of, Take One as part of St. Pius X. It is still something we do for our parish, but we recognize that it's not just our parishioners anymore that are connecting with this, that it's so many, around the country. And so I continue to get emails when the series launches each year from people I don't know from other parts of the country that this was passed on to me by so-and-so who's a friend of so-and-so, and, 2 or 3 degrees of separation. And I've signed up for it. It's been so helpful. It's every morning it's what I do when I have my cup of coffee. It gets me centered for the day and helps me to focus on what Advent's all about.
Yeah.
Or it's really helped me to get into Lent and prepare for Holy Week. And so that's what's been, I think, the most powerful for me, is hearing how just this quick 1.5 to 2 minute video with a simple message and a simple reflection has unlocked the season and the time of year for people in a much more unique way.
Yeah. And it's really a great thing for listeners or viewers to hear as well, is that these videos are encouraging your parishioners to spread the gospel. Right?
Yep.
Like, how many times have you sat in committee meetings or ministry meetings, trying to think about a better way to communicate or a better way to engage, or it's almost sitting right in front of us, where these videos, in which simple videos, and just like what you said, they don't have to be, and I love Bishop Barron videos, but they don't have to be complex, heavy catechetical videos. They have to be something that people can relate to, and it impacts their life, and they're going to share it with other people. And so I think that's another benefit, that if a pastor's listening to this, or any ministry leader, that's another benefit as to why would you want to shoot videos at your parish, these short videos? Well, to help people share with other people, their friends, what their faith means to them.
Yep.
That's another So we have engagement, we have evangelization, with these videos.
Hmm.
But what were, I make videos as well, and encourage pastors to do it. But you know, for some, there is that challenge. Like sometimes it's emotional challenge, sometimes it's we might say a time challenge. Um, what would you say to encourage people, other than, and sometimes it is this, right, Father Sean? Just do it. Just
Right.
do it. It's not, you know, just do it, right? But
Right.
what would you say?
Well, just do it. But
Just do
also,
it, right?
it it is time consuming at the front end. You know, from the practicalities of composing what you're going to say, narrowing it down, those types of things. One of the challenges for us is that I'm uh, I'm a preacher that relies on my text in front of me. Like I just still, after 13 and a half years of priesthood, I just still can't preach off the cuff. I can, but it's never as good as when I've got my words there and I've crafted them and worked with them. And these videos are the same way, that I do have a teleprompter there with what the script is in front of me, because I can't be articulate, and it needs to be concise. And so we've really worked to keep that message concise. And so that challenge for us is that when it comes to the equipment that we utilize, we might have a lot more that we have to take and utilize because I need a teleprompter.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas others can, I know many gifted priests that are able to put a camera in front of their face and tell them, we need you to talk about Lent and talk about the cross and go. And they can spew out a wonderful, incredible, reflective, deep message in a minute or two that is concise, and bam, you're there and you're good to go. So their equipment, their challenges might be less than ours in that sense. So it is just doing it, but then as you do it, it starts to become a little easier, for instance. So like, as far as the practicalities of the setup for us and how much time it takes, recently in on the France trip that I was on, I took one day and I went around and I filmed 6 videos, and I can do a video in about 5 to 7 minutes, with setup, getting the camera right, shoot, go, ready to go, and it's done. um, Now, the quality is not the best, maybe because I'm doing it, and the challenge I ran into this year was my tripod broke, so I had a selfie stick. And so you can sort of see in the image, here's the church. And as the video is continuing, the church's steeple seems to be moving down because my arm's getting tired. But, you know, we're able to quickly do them now because we've done them so frequently. And we've played around with a number of different technologies and apps that are available, that we've been able to know what works for us and how to utilize it and how to quickly and efficiently do it. So that took us some time, and it was a little frustrating at first. I mean, V and I complained back and forth of, oh gosh, we've got to go film another video today and we got to drive all the way over here. Yes, but we went, we did it. And so in those first couple of years when we were doing off sites, we really tried to stack them so that if we went to point A in Norfolk, we would then loop back around to B and then hit C and D before we got back to the parish. And so it takes some planning to map that out, but that sort of efficiency and that sort of work helped us in the long run. And the time, I think one of the major time elements too is, if you're going to write the scripts, or write out what you're going to say, and if you're going to I'm not advocating everybody do a series because that's a lot of work. And, I've got 3 other people that are supporting me on it. But as a pastor, if you're going to do something quarterly, you just have to have the time to sit down and write it out. But knowing, to do a 1.5 to 2 minute video, it's 100 to 200 words,
Hmm.
which when you start to write is not a lot. And
Right.
you will notice that you can go on. And
Yeah.
that forces you to be concise to keep the time down. So that's a time component. Filming it, Could be, could not be. I mean, if you just have your phone in front of you and you're just going to do a simple thing off your phone, then it's pretty simple. And then I don't know how much editing you might want to do on the back end, but some are able, and you can just start recording, start speaking, and press the stop button, and then send it out.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to start. Again, I was fortunate that with V, for instance, we've got a whole intro that she's done. We've got a whole credit sort of thing at the back of it. We've got a song that's playing underneath, sort of in the background of my behind my voice in a sense. So we've added a few other elements just to kind of spice it up a little bit, but I had the team to help me do that. If you
Yeah.
don't, that's okay. There's many videos we've all seen where someone is just sitting there, even sitting at their desk like this, and doing it on the camera that runs through their computer screen.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So in shooting these videos, making these videos as a pastor, um, I I would guess that there probably was not some type of videographer class in seminary, right? Probably not. Maybe there
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, it was right after the accounting class we had. No, there
So
was not a videography class.
right. So making videos as a pastor, how has that helped you being a pastor? Or, in what way has it impacted you as a pastor? Because there's certain things that a pastor will do at a parish and say, man, I'm so glad I did this. Like how has it impacted you as a pastor now doing these videos?
So I have some regular lovers of the video. One in particular that I can think of that she's so good about writing me every so often throughout the series when they happen. And so she's one person that comes to mind every time I film these videos of, I film it and then I think, I wonder what she's going to say about this one, or I wonder what what is she going to say about this? From the standpoint of it's also revelatory to hear how it's impacted my parishioners' lives and people's lives, because it's not just our parishioners anymore, sharing personal stories. So, in some instances of these videos, we've talked about grief, we've talked about death, especially in Lent, of course. And to then get emails or people to stop me to share how that particular message and some line that I said in there that I thought was not going to be super impactful, maybe,
Mm,
that just completely opened up something for someone and helped them to move to the next stage of grief, or help them to see the resurrection and hope of eternal life in a different way than they had before. And so all those little comments that I get, and they're not little, but those snippets that I receive from people, it's helped me to understand my people more and understand the parish, especially my parish more. That as we've continued to craft and write videos and compose them for future series, that's been part of how we've done that. Is the feedback we've received, the stories that we've received, the impact that it's made, that's helping to craft how future ones are produced and assembled. So that's been the biggest, I think, impact for me. The secondary impact is now that we're doing the travel piece, that whenever you go on a pilgrimage, and to any of my brother priests that lead them, you know, people tell us, "Oh, Father, you're going away for a 2-week vacation." It's not vacation for the priest. You're
mm,
working, you're leading the people. There's a lot of it's very prayerful, and a lot of practicalities and all those elements. And so when I wasn't doing these videos, I was going from place to place and moving from place to place just like everybody else. But now we go from place to place, and when I get into a church, I know from the team, they'll say, for instance, when you're in Notre Dame in Paris, if you can, see if you can film a video near where the crown of thorns was. Well, that's going to be near impossible, but so that's when I go into Notre Dame, and it's kind of a broad example, but I know what I'm sort of looking for. That's an obvious one. We all are, many of us are aware that the crown of thorns is there in Notre Dame, but churches that may not be as well known as Notre Dame or Notre Dame, that there's an element, Steve's very good about this. There's going to be a picture of this in this part of the church. Go and look at it. And if you can, have that in the background of your video.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's so specific. And I joke with him about it all the time of how in the world did you know that this was back there? You've never been to this site, but it's
Yeah.
just the research that he's done. But that for me has forced me to go to a part of a church that I may have overlooked because the major thing everybody comes to see in that particular church is where I'm focused. But this has forced me to really look more at my surroundings and see different pieces of art or just different architectural elements of churches from Europe or other parts of the world, and really reflect more on the video that I'm about to do, or even on the pilgrimage that I'm about to undertake as well. So that's been the personal experience for me. Is it's allowed me the opportunity to do the pilgrimage part with those that are joining myself and my other priest friend on the pilgrimage. But then when we have our free time in the church, to then take my free time and go to this area where I need to shoot a video because of what the message is, and review the message and spend some time in prayer there and really see something that I may not have seen had I just stayed with the pilgrimage group,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah.
And then
And
for those in the group, that are on the pilgrimage, many of them look forward to the videos because they know that I'm shooting them, but they are reliving their pilgrimage when they view them. But many of them have said to me, but I didn't notice that painting that you went and did the video on. That was in that
yeah.
church. Yeah, I didn't recognize it either. So it takes them back to that place, but then it takes them back in a different way that unlocks, the pilgrimage and whatever their prayer experience was in a new way too.
Yeah. And there's such a great point about videos too, is that in what you're saying is there are things in the background that people will see that can trigger something for them
Mm-hmm.
spiritually as well, to exactly what you're saying. And it's funny you're bringing this up, because if you notice, there's a clock in the background here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, but I don't think it works. It's been on the same time for the last 15 minutes.
Right. And another pastor I work with, we do a lot of Zoom calls, and he's like, "Hey, Darren, I don't think your clock works." I said, "No, it does and it doesn't. It's set for 3 o'clock and it stays there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 3 o'clock hour,
Mm-hmm.
So intentionally I have it set there, for a reflection of the 3 o'clock time that Jesus passed, died. So it's interesting, because now I don't want to say this and then have people start thinking, well, geez, I really have to like make sure that my background in the videos that I'm gonna start are no, you can get there. You can
Mm-mm.
get
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
it can be very, very simple. Um, I think
Yeah. Because our first season, I was in the church with the crucifix behind me that's on the wall, or I was in front of the St. Pius X statue, or I was in the parking lot across the street from the church, so the church itself could be behind me.
yeah,
Very simple. It was more about the message
yeah,
than it was necessarily about location and message. So
yeah,
you're right.
yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean, this is such an important topic that I think more and more pastors are thinking about, but haven't yet pulled the trigger, so to speak.
Hmm.
And just as we started off saying, it's really just do it, just start, because of the benefits that it can have for your community. And from what I'm hearing from you, Father Sean, you as a pastor as well, you benefit from it as well. So, any last thoughts or a message of encouragement you want to provide for those who are looking at this,
Yeah,
considering?
I think as far as the just do it element of it, you know, it most laptops today have a camera built into them. If sit in your office and just put the laptop up on a few books or whatever, so the screen, the your face is a little more centered on the screen. It's not down at an angle, and you can have the text right there. And you can do your video filming from there with just your office, your books behind you, or whatever other images you have on the walls in your office, for instance. And it's, the location doesn't have to be the end all be all. It's the message is what the most important part of it is. And for us, that's what got us started, was the message. And then as we evolved, it became location and message.
Yeah.
So I would say for those that want to get involved and that want to do this, do it. It can be very beneficial for your parish and very helpful for your parish. And you don't have to bite off a lot to
Yeah.
do it. Think about quarterly, like I said, 4 times a year that you do it. And it's a great way to engage parishioners in a new way. And then what you may find too is you may find that as people start to approach you and offer encouragement, and that was really powerful, I wish you could do more, that can become your opportunity to start to find out who in the parish community might be able to assist you with these of, doing videography, or, there might be some people that are teaching OCIA that you might be able to work with to help craft, messages that you do as well. So, just starting it and just doing it. And all of us priests, we write homilies. So we're sitting and we're writing, we're composing a message on the scriptures. It's sort of it's a very similar practice, I think.
Yeah.
And thinking about it though, from a daily mass homily length versus a Sunday homily length, so to speak, can also alleviate the stress, because, our daily mass homilies are just a couple minutes long. Your video can be, just the same as well. So that would be my encouragement to really just do it. It's not challenging. It has its challenges, but it's not something that is reserved for just some of us that might have the gift or the talent to be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Such a great message. Well, Father Sean, thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing what I think is an inspiring story about how to engage parishioners in today's world, today's culture, through video, and to not just engage, but to evangelize as well. So thank you so much for being with us. We will have in the show notes how you can connect with 1 minute, right? It's one.
The Take One, yep.
Yep, the Take One, where you can connect with that and start watching those as well. So thanks again for being with us, and it's a pleasure having you, Father Sean.
Thank you. I loved being here. It was great.
All right. Thank you so much.